Good day, learners. I'm Rudy Fabe, and I'm gonna be your instructor for today. Our topic for today is about Republic Act number 6713, also known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. So, what is Republic Act 6713? Uh, it is a law in the Philippines that establishes the ethical standards and guidelines for the behavior and conduct of public officials and employees. Uh, The law aims to promote integrity, accountability, and responsibility among public officials and employees in the performance of their duties and functions. It also outlines the duties and responsibilities of public officials and employees, including their obligation to uphold the Constitution and to serve the public interest with utmost integrity, honesty, and loyalty. The Code of Conduct also sets forth the standards of behavior expected of public officials and employees, including the avoidance of conflict of interest, the proper handling of public funds and property, and the observance of transparency and accountability in all official transactions. It also provides for the establishment of the Code of Conduct and ethical standards for the public officials and employees commission to enforce the provisions of the law and to investigate and resolve complaints against public officials and employees who violate the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct for public officials and employees, or the RA 6713, serves as a guide for a public officials and employees to promote good governance and ethical behavior in the performance of their duties, ultimately ensuring the public's trust and confidence in the government. In the section 4 of RA 6713, Norms of Conduct of Public Officials and Employees. What does it mean? It means that every public official and employee shall observe the following as standards of personal conduct in the discharge and execution of official duties. The norms of conduct for public officials and employees, or RA 6713, is a set of guidelines and principles that serve as a code of ethics for individuals working in the public sector. The objective of these norms is to promote professionalism, accountability, and integrity among public officials and employees. These norms are essential for ensuring that public officials and employees uphold ethical standards and maintain public trust. They are typically enforced through disciplinary procedures, and violations of these norms can lead to disciplinary action, including dismissal or other sanctions. These norms, these norms provide a framework for ethical behavior in public service, and they cover a wide range of area such as conflict interest, impartiality, accountability, responsibility, respect for the law, political neutrality, and we're gonna discuss that further. The first one in section 4, A, is commitment to public interest. The B is the professionalism. Public officials and employees shall perform and discharge their duties with the highest degree of excellence, professionalism, intelligence, and skill. They shall enter public service with utmost devotion and dedication to the duty. They shall endeavor to discourage wrong perceptions of the rules as dispensers or peddlers of undue patronage. Respectful communication, collaborative approach, and professional appearance. And the letter C of section 4, justness and sincerity. When we say justness and sincerity, public officials and employees shall remain true to the people at all times. They must act with justness and sincerity and shall not discriminate against anyone, especially the poor and unprivileged. They shall at all times respect the rights of others and shall refrain from doing acts contrary to law. Good morals, good customs, public policy, public order, public safety, and public interest. Some examples of justness and sincerity in the public employment could include, for example, a police officer who treats all individuals with respect and dignity, regardless of their race, gender, or socioeconomic status. Another one, a teacher who is fair and objective in grading students and provides constructive feedback to help them improve. And last example, um, a civil servant who maintains confidentiality and protects sensitive information while also ensuring transparency and accountability in their work. Political neutrality. This means that individuals who work for government or in other public positions should not express personal political opinions or engage in partisan political activities while performing their duties. It means, this is because public employees are meant to serve the public as a whole, regardless of political affiliation, and maintain the trust and confidence of citizens in impartiality and fairness of government decision making. Example of political neutral, neutrality, um, neutral representation. Public employees should refrain from using their position to promote or support any political party, group, or candidate. Another one is impartial decision making. Public employees must make decisions based on the law, facts, and on objective criteria rather than political pressure or personal biases. And lastly is restriction on political activities, provision on political contributions. And overall, political neutrality ensures that public employees are accountable to the public and uphold the principles of democracy, transparency, and fairness in their work. Now, responsiveness to the public officials. Responsiveness to the public. Uh, in this area, public officials and employees must provide prompt, courteous, and adequate service to the public, ensure openness of information, public consultations, and hearing whenever appropriate, encourage suggestions, simplify and systematize policy rules and procedures, and avoid red tape. What does it mean? It is important aspect of public service that involves being attentive, respectful, and prompt in addressing the needs, concerns, and inquiries of members of the public. Uh, Public employees are responsible for providing services and resources to the public, and being responsive is crucial in maintaining public trust and confidence in government. Example, timely response to inquiries. Public employees should respond promptly to inquire from members of the public, providing accurate and helpful information as needed. This can be through various channels such as phone, email, or in person. Another example, accessibility. Public employees should be easily accessible to members of the public, whether through office hours, appointments, or online communication channels. And lastly, responsiveness to the public involves a commitment to serving the needs of the public, being open, transparent, and maintaining accountability for actions taken by public employees. The next one is nationalism and patriotism. So when we say nationalism, it is refers to a political ideology that emphasizes the importance of shared national identity, culture, and history, right? While in patriotism, on the other hand, refers to a deep affection and pride for one's country and willingness to defend it against perceived threats. Unlike nationalism, patriotism does not necessarily involve a political agenda or belief in superiority of one's nation over others. When it comes to public employees, both nationalism and patriotism can be relevant. For example, public employees who work for the government may be expected to uphold the values and interests of their nation as part of their job duties. This could involve promoting national unity and identity, supporting national policies and initiatives, defending the counter against external threats. Some examples of nationalism and patriotism, as demonstrated by public employees, include military personnel who demonstrate patriotism by serving in the armed forces and defending the country against external threats. Teachers who promote national identity and unity by teaching students about the country's history, culture, and values. Now, the next one, the commitment to democracy. Here, as a public employees means that individuals who work in public service are dedicated to upholding democratic principles and values in their work. This includes supporting the rule of law, protecting individuals' rights and freedoms, and promoting transparency and accountability again in government. Example, ensuring fair and impartial administration of the law. This involves upholding the rule of law and ensuring that all individuals are treated fairly and equitably. Public employees who work in law enforcement, the judiciary, and the other areas of justice system play a critical role in promoting this commitment. Last but not the least in section 4 is simple living. Simple living, as a public employee, refer to a lifestyle that prioritizes fragility, sustainability, and minimalism in the context of working as public employee. This means that individuals who chose this lifestyle are focused on reducing their consumption, minimizing their impact on the environment, and finding ways to live a fulfilling life without relying on material possessions or excessive wealth. Now, in section 4, B, the Civil Service Commission shall adopt positive ensures to promote observance of ethical standards, including information programs and workshops, and continuing research and experimentation on measures that provide positive motivation. Now let's go to section 5, duties of public officials and employees. In this section, in the performance of their duties, all public officials and employees are under obligation to act promptly on letters and requests, submit annual performance reports, process documents and papers expeditiously, act immediately on the public personal transaction, and make documents accessible to the public. Now let's go back to letter A of section 5. What does it mean by act promptly on letters and requests? All public officials and employees shall, within 15 working days from receipt thereof, respond to letters, telegrams, or other means of communication sent by the public. The reply must contain the action taken on the request. So, in submit in annual performance reports, all heads or other responsible officers of offices and agencies of the government and the government-owned or controlled corporations shall within 45 working days from the end of the year render a performance report of the agency or office corporation concerned, such as report shall be open and available to the public within regular office hours. Process documents and papers expeditiously. All officials' papers and documents must be processed and completed within a reasonable time from the preparation thereof and must contain, as far as practicable, not for more than 3 signatories therein. In the absence of duly authorized signatories, the official next in rank or official in charge shall sign for and in their behalf. Act immediately on the public's personal transaction. It means all public officials and employees must attain to anyone who wants to avail himself of the services of their office and must, all times, act promptly and expeditiously. Lastly, of section 5, make documents accessible to the public. It means all public documents must be made accessible to and readily available for inspection by the public within reasonable working hours. Remember, within reasonable working hours. And section 7, prohibited acts and transactions. In section 7, in addition to acts and omissions of public officials and employees now prescribed in the Constitution and existing law, the following shall constitute prohibited acts and transactions of any public officials and employee and are hereby declared to unlawful: A. Financial and material interest, outside employment and other activities related thereto, um, disclosure and or misuse of confidential information, and that's it. What does it mean by financial and material interest? It means and public officials and employees shall not directly or indirectly have any financial or material interest in any transaction requiring the approval of their office. Uh, Outside employment and other activities related thereto. It means public officials and employees during their incumbency shall not own, control, manage, or accept employment as officer, employee, consultant, counsel, broker, agent, trustee, or normee in any private enterprise regulated, supervised, or licensed by their office unless expressly allowed by law. Also, uh, there also they shall not engage in the private practice of their professions unless authorized by the Constitution or law, provided that such practice will not conflict or tend to conflict with their official functions. And lastly, they shall not recommend any person to any position in a private enterprise which has a regular or pending official transaction with their office. In Section 7, Prohibited Acts and Transaction, these provisions shall continue to apply for a period of 1 year after resignation, retirement, or separation from public office, except in the case of subparagraph and subparagraph. But the professional concerned cannot practice his profession in the connection with any matter before the office he used to be with, in which case the 1 year provision shall likewise apply. Disclosure and or misuse of confidential information. Again, this means that public officials and employees shall not use or divulge confidential or classified information officially known to them by reason of their office and not made available to the public, either to further their private interest or give undue advantage to anyone or to prejudice the public interest or solicitation or acceptance of gifts. Public officials in Section 7 and employees shall not solicit or accept directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, loan, or anything of monetary value from any person in the course of their official duties or in connection with any operation being regulated by or transactions which may be affected by the functions of their office. With all that being said, let's go to Section 8, Statements and Disclosure. Firstly, all public officials and employees, except those who serve in honorary capacity, laborers and casual or temporary workers, shall file under oath their statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth, and a disclosure of business and interest, financial connection, and those of their spouses and unmarried children under 18 years of age living in their household. What does it mean? It means all public officials and employees required under this section to file the aforesaid documents shall also executed within 30 days from the date of their assumption of the office. The necessary authority in the favor of ombudsman to obtain from all appropriate government agencies, including Bureau of Internal Revenue, and such documents as may show their assets, liabilities, net worth, and also their business interests and financial connections, and previous years, including, if possible, the year when they are first assumed any office of the government. Husband and wife who are both public officials or employees may file the required statement jointly or separately. So the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth, and disclosure of business interest and financial connection shall be filed by constitutional and national elective officials. Number two, senators and congressmen, regional and local officials and employees with the deputy ombudsmen in their respective regions. Number four, officers of armed forces from the rank of uh, colonel or naval captain with the office of the president, and these below said ranks with the deputy ombudsmen in their respective regions. And number five, all other public officials and employees defined in the Republic Act number 319 as amended with the Civil Service Commission. Second section, letter B, identification and disclosure of relatives. It shall be the duty of every public official or employee to identify and disclose to the best of his knowledge and information his relatives in the government in the form, manner, and frequency prescribed by Civil Service Commission. The next one is accessibility of documents. Any and all statements filed under this act shall be made available for inspection at reasonable hours. Number two, such statements shall be made available for copying or reproduction after 10 working days from the time they are filed as required by the law. Number three, any person requesting a copy of statement shall be required to pay a reasonable fee to cover the cost of reproduction and mailing of such statement, as well as the cost of certification. Number four, any statement filed under this act shall be available to the public for a period of 10 years after receipt of statement. After such period, the statement may be destroyed unless needed in an ongoing investigation. The next one is prohibited acts. What does it mean? It shall be unlawful for any person to obtain or use any statement filed under this act for A. Any purpose contrary to morals or public policy, or B. Any commercial purpose other than by the news and communications media of dissemination to the general public. So that's all the section 8. Now let's go to the section 9, divestment. What does it mean? A public official or employee shall avoid conflicts of interest at all times. When a conflict of interest arises, he shall resign from his position in any private business enterprises within 30 days from uh, from his assumptions of office, and or divest himself of his shareholdings or interests within 60 days from such assumptions. The same rule shall apply where the public official or employee is a partner in a partnership. The requirements of the divestment shall not apply to those who serve the government in the honorary capacity, excuse me, nor to the laborers and the casual or temporary workers. Now we are at the last section, which is section 11, penalties. Penalties. A. Any public officials or employees, regardless of whether or not he holds office or employment in a casual, temporary, holdover, permanent, or regular capacity, committing any violation of this act shall be punished with a fine not exceeding the equivalent of 6 months' salary for suspension, not exceeding 1 year, or removal depending on the gravity of the offense after due notice and hearing by the appropriate body or agency. If the violation is punishable by a heavier penalty under another law, he shall be prosecuted under the latter statute. Violations of section 7, 8, or 9 of this act shall be punishable with imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or fine not exceeding 5,000 pesos or both, and in the discretion of the court of competent jurisdiction, disqualification to hold public office. Also, in section 11, any violation any violation hereof proven in a proper administrative proceeding shall be sufficient cause for removal or dismissal of public official or employee, even if no criminal prosecution is instituted against him. Also, in section 11, private individuals who participate in conspiracy as co-principals, compliances, or accessories with public officials or employees in violation of this act shall be subject to the same penal liabilities as the public officials or employees, shall be tried jointly with them. And lastly, the official or employee concerned may bring an action against any person who obtains or uses a report for the purpose prohibited by section 8 of this act, and the court in which such action is brought by I may assess against such person in penalty in any amount not exceed 25,000 pesos. And if another sanction hereunder or under any other law is heavier, the latter shall apply. And that's all regarding to the Republic Act number 6713, also known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. Now with the questions and takeaways. Thank you for listening.